Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojú ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀.
Hello and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by the legendary Neurotoxin and the infamous Diggs. How are you two?
Great.
Doing all right.
Well, we are, as we said, trying to get back in a regular schedule. So here we are 1 week later with a show and actually quite a lot to talk about.
Yeah. First thing I want to say is happy Unreal 5 release on April 5th. It's out. It's up there. You can go and get it and do the thing, everybody. I might start messing with it myself.
Not me.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, you'd never touch a game engine.
I mean, reversing tools, yes. Learning to get deep into C++, no.
It's all blueprints, man.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to some, right? Actually, interestingly enough, when it comes to Unreal, I guess not to get too deep into this because we'll never get a guest on any ever again. But if they know what I do, actually, when I'm playing around with Unreal games, it's actually much more machine assembly language than actual C++ because it's looking through other stuff. But anyways, I won't go down that road.
And is MetaHuman Creator a part of Unreal 5, or is it something created with Unreal 5? I usually think of it as being associated with like a part of UE5, but I'm not sure.
That is a good question.
I mean, I would assume it's separate from the engine, right?
Well, why not just look?
I think it's one of the baked-in apps.
Yeah, it is a free cloud-based app that empowers anyone to create photorealistic digital humans complete with hair and clothing in minutes. MetaHumans come fully rigged and ready to animate in your Unreal Engine projects.
Yeah.
So it comes with it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So outside of the base engine, but so you import basically the character animations and all that. So.
Yeah. So you could play with that for free.
Yeah.
It's interesting, actually, you bring this up because also apparently there was some, I don't even know where it got started, some discussion about accusations that Intrepid was using that primarily from what they showed us and not actually something that they created themselves, which I think was actually pretty quickly. Well, one, Steven said on stream that this was an in-house tool that they've created, but also kind of reinforced that on, I think it was Reddit and some other places. But
well, yeah, and it makes sense because if you look at all of the ads and everything for it, it's meta human. It's not meta manimal. It's not meta orc. It's not meta wood nymph elf thing. It's meta human. So if you want all of that control and all of those features, not just for all of your humanoid player races, but all races and all bipedal and quadrupedal creatures to be able to use the same tech and variants and tools. That's something that's going to go above and beyond what MetaHuman offers, at least probably out of the bag at this point. So yes, for them to say that this is the tech that they're using and how they intend to use it, I fully believe this is something that they've been working on. And one of those other things, it's one of those you can't have it both ways sort of thing. Either they're taking way too long to develop the game, I want it ready now, or it's there's no way they've possibly designed this amazing tool. They have to have just used the MetaHuman. There's no in between. There's no like, well, wait a minute, maybe it took so long for them to get to this point because they developed this tool, and it took however long for them to get all the tools and tech and finally get it up and running in Unreal 5.
Well, and I assume it's like the engine itself that you have access to the source code and that you can modify things, right?
Yeah.
It is kind of a dumb argument because they're using Unreal, so they have inevitably taken something pre-existing and built on top of it. But that's the nature of using another engine.
And that's why they wanted Unreal in the first place, was because there's so many mechanics or features they can use right out the bat to make it look great quickly.
So, I don't know. I always, those sorts of discussions drive me crazy because it really makes me feel like whoever is arguing doesn't understand why you use an engine to begin with. So, it's like, of course, it's not all from in-house. That would take forever. These are not Variant. What is this? What was it before it was Variant Studio? Whatever it was before Sony I don't know. Back when they would create their own engines. So.
And I was saying, just on the time factor, last year when people were asking for the Dunier to be updated so that they could be wider and broader, and I was saying, I don't know how much you can go, because if you go so far, they're going to have to redo armor and retweak a whole bunch of stuff. And that's going to, if they do that, that's going to add time to the schedule. And I think at the time I was expecting Alpha 2 to be coming within a matter of months rather than over a year. But yeah, once you jump over to Unreal 5 instead of Unreal 4, that's going to add some time. We still haven't seen Tulnar. We're just now getting to see Orcs. We've had updates to the Pyre, significant updates to the Pyre model. So all that stuff is going to take time, and you can just imagine on the schedule that means we're a little later for Alpha 2 rather than sooner, which can be okay, but you just have to know that when they're making changes like that, and especially when your request changes, that may add to the schedule. Because
Well, what did I posted it in chat, right? What this was last week? What did I say? 273 days or something, which was when the Alpha 1 closed.
yeah,
So not quite to a year, but closing in on it, and undoubtedly, and we mentioned that in a past show too. That that you kind of, when there's a decision to move to Unreal 5, you kind of understood. Okay, they really had no plans to release Alpha 2 anytime soon, which means it's probably perfect timing to flip over. So, well, we've already spent 15 minutes on other shit, so let's get on to questions. We were going to go through the Q&A, but before we start...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, before we started that, there was one other thing I was wanting to bring back up. We had sort of touched on it a little bit in regards to the character creator. And I had posted our video to Reddit like I usually do, and then I pulled out this comment and posted it to Reddit. And actually, it seemed favorable, but I thought maybe a little bit more discussion here. It was this idea of making the character creator free, which there were some folks that seemed confused by that question. Like the assumption was that it will be free. I'm not really aware of too many MMORPGs that release their... I know there's been a couple that released them to everyone free beforehand. But anyways, I was just, my thought was it makes sense to try to grasp and pull people in to say, here's the creator. And I'm not necessarily meaning during Alpha 2. I mean, this could even be just, 3 months before launch. Here's your character creator, and get people playing around with your tools as a way to sort of pull in the ones that maybe weren't sure they wanted to actually, put money down and be a part of your game world. To me, it seems like there's no real loss there. It's more of a win-win. Like, it's not a super important part of your, you're not giving away your game. I don't see what the downside to that would be. there were some folks that I think it came across that I was saying I wanted free shit, but I have a lifetime through Kickstarter lifetime membership, so there's no free for me. It's already paid for. I don't know. I was curious your thoughts if you agreed or disagreed.
I definitely agree that if they're going to do something like that, free is a good idea for trying to get as many people in as possible. If not free, if you're trying to make them do the first thing, make the first step, create their account, make that first transaction, break the ice, it could be $5 or $10, and instead of just the character creator, you also get maybe the ability to, put certain equipment on them, pose them in different ways, see them doing a few different actions from the different classes, and being able to use that for, if they want to make their D&D character, using that as the character creator, for example. They have that as an option, or if they just like making characters, potentially the ability, I think I had mentioned this in the past, the ability to potentially create the character and then as like a commission sort of thing, export it as like a CSV or something that they can plug in. Then they have that character that you made for them, and you resolve whatever transaction on Fiverr or however you charge them as a professional character creator artist. But I could definitely see all of that with the $10 sort of charge also coming with a special skin or aesthetic or attire or something that isn't available when the game releases, or is only available if you get this thing before you get the game, or something like that. Some sort of like, one last little FOMO before you get through the gate sort of thing.
Sheridan says a character creator that expensive is $5 to $10 expensive. I'm wondering, but yeah, I think $5, $10. That sounds okay for a character creator. I'm
Expansive, not
expecting it to be
expensive.
free. Oh, expansive. I got you. I'm distracted reading and listening to my co-host. Yeah, I think $5 to $10 sounds kind of reasonable. I'd pay that for a really good character creator at the depth that I've seen even so far, just to play around with stuff. And I think, I don't know, before Alpha 2, right? Because we'd have something. It's just an interesting thing. So by Alpha 2, we would already have access to the Alpha 2 version. So at that point, we might as well, well, for us, it's free. So, but I would think you would want to do it before Alpha 2 if you were going to, in that sense. On the other hand, I expect more changes to features after Alpha 2, so it'd be kind of weird to have us saving. I mean, we'd have to have another release of that character creator, that standalone character creator. We'd have to have that updated as well, and people would have to go in not thinking that whatever they created, that's going to be their final draft. I guess we would want to be able to use those as templates and be able to, in the future versions, be able to easily update them. So I don't know. We'll see.
It might be possible. I think that is one of the big reasons why not to have it as a separate sort of thing till right before release. Just so that we don't have to worry about different versions and people trying to get a leg up on things only to find that there's way more options, or the options that they chose and the features that they chose are ranges that are no longer applicable because they wanted to create more separation between the two different human races, for example. So the proportions you had before just don't exist for the version of human that you picked. I could see things like that happening. So yeah, keep it till towards the end. Once all that stuff is finalized, you're marching towards final build, but you've got it like 99.95% there and ready to go, and doing all the things and pre-tested and all of that sort of stuff for like a month or two before it even goes up.
AOC Crafter says they're not gonna pay extra.
I ain't either.
Character creator after spending $500.
Oh yeah, if you're already some sort of invested player or backer, you should just be getting it. I'm talking about for people who have put zero amount of money and investment in, which is why I also think getting like a nice little skins pack to go with it is a nice little bonus. It's like, hey, by the way, you can look kind of cool when you come in because we're going to give you some skins for getting this, bro, sis, bro, whatever. Friendo, glorious friend, I think they would call you.
Friend.
Glorious. I wonder where he got that from. I have to ask him that sometime. Whenever he's on next time, that's my main question. Why that term?
It's a very like generic but like nice sounding, like glorious this, glorious that, like that.
I feel like I should be in church.
I
I
think it's
somebody at least at a speech. But
yeah, I think it's just part of his role playing persona.
All right, well, let's get to these questions. We're almost halfway through this damn show already. So, I think there were only like 10 or something like that. But there's some interesting ones in here. So I'm just going to start from the top. So I'll read them all.
Right.
These are kind of not word for word. I didn't really want to type everything out.
That's fine.
But number one that was asked, will there be a high-stakes loot zone for PvP? So as if, being flagged and sieges and all of that wasn't enough, apparently the question was more or less full. I think the idea was like full loot, PvP. The answer was no. Current systems are in place to include material risk for both flagging and other opt-in systems. I'm not cranky tonight. Well, maybe a little, but I'm being direct.
I think it's probably a better idea to stick with that plan they have, because those sorts of high stakes PvP, I think it's different if there's like a tournament circuit system where it's like a league sort of thing and everything's officialized, and the gear that you own as part of that league is what you fight with and what you wager and potentially lose parts of. If you lose a sanctioned duel at an arena in a league, that's a bit different than just like full loot, take it or leave it. You might win it all, you might lose all your stuff sort of thing, which I feel like would be highly abused by people who just come in with janky stuff, beat up one person, take their stuff and get the hell out of there. And those sorts of shenanigans. Maybe it'd also be a no mount zone or something. But I definitely think that outside of some sort of sanctioned league, arena, club, whatever environment, that's not the sort of thing that they're really trying to do with the game. Obviously, if you've got a legendary weapon or piece of armor or something, everywhere you go is a high stakes PvP zone, because everybody wants to gank you and take your super badass thing. but that's the nature of the risk you're taking from being the bearer of that item.
But it's not, because that's only possible if you are corrupted, because you only drop resources. You only loot resources.
If it's an item that other people have gotten a quest for, that, so-and-so is the legendary blah, blah, blah bow holder. Well, you, as being a maximum level, whatever, and, skilled trained archer that you are, and you've killed 10,000 things with the bow, you can home in on this thing when it's within a kilometer of you. You can try to take them down. So I could see that being a mechanic, like people just naturally get that quest when they get nearby, if they want to try to challenge to get access to that bow, or they see it used in combat.
You can't get that bow from them.
Well, no.
You can't get that bow from them for PvP.
Again, if it's a quest item, it's like the gem from their little story example thing that they did with the little choose your own adventure. The gem was able to be taken from your party because it was a quest item from that other party, and that's why it could have been taken. So just in that same way, yes, if you've got a legendary weapon and someone's got a quest to take it, they can kill you and take. Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, we'll wait for them to be the answer, but I'm pretty sure that's how it goes.
No. As far as I know, you cannot loot an item. You can loot resources. So, yeah, point me to the quote that says you can loot an item, even a legendary item. I don't think you can loot that. But the way you would set this up, the only way I can see this going is a high stakes loot zone would be rare resources and materials from a dungeon per raid. I mean, that could count. But items, I'm pretty sure not. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of PvP. Some people want more, some people want less. I think we just have to play and see what it feels like.
I'm fascinated by the people that want more chances to lose everything. Like, are they that convinced they're going to win? Do they always win? Like, what is it? What do they do when they lose and they lose everything?
Well,
hopefully they've built up a stockpile of stuff that they can go back to and come back again and again. Bring more people.
Are those the people that just want to beat
gankers
down on somebody's, not quite as good?
Well, it's also funny to me that people think that Care Bears suck at PvP rather than just don't like PvP as much as hardcore PvPers. Just because you don't like to PvP doesn't mean you can't be good at it. Right?
Well, it's just
because you don't want to PvP all the time doesn't mean that when you do PvP you suck at it.
Yeah, humans are very risk averse, right? So we would rather not lose what we have than possibly gain more but lose what we have. Like so I'm always fascinated by this small group of people that want more and more PvP and want that risk.
It's because they won't lose. They're not the losers.
Well. Anyways. Let's see. Question number 2. Will infrastructural issues requiring reactive tasks outside of sieges, weather, and monster coins be a part of the node system? The answer to this basically said yes to those 3 things. The answer was absolutely. 3 primary systems that deal with building damage or destruction exist. NPC event systems, node sieges, and node wars, which are basically what the question asked. But the example that Stephen gave was a hazard like a hurricane or a tornado could come through, damage buildings, and you have to work together.
Or constructing buildings. So constructing buildings also sets up other events. Could be environmental catastrophes, or those could trigger mobs to attack. Constructing buildings and new services, opening new services in the node can open up
and that was
raids and dungeons and all that stuff.
Yeah, and that actually was a specific part to the answer too. He did say that during a siege or if there's a node war that sort of you have this progression of building towards better buildings, and so that chain could get broken and you have to go back and fix it before you move forward.
Right.
But I don't think it was anything necessarily interesting or new that we didn't know before that came out of that question. Although I'm curious to see how they would implement things like a tornado or a hurricane.
Magical storm. EverQuest Next talked about earthquakes as being one of the environmental hazards that would come from progressing your town to city and all that. So hopefully some of those people are using those same ideas. Some of the Sony people are using the same ideas.
But if you're creating a system that damages buildings, can you make it so that it also damages the players?
I could see how something could do one and not the other, or something that could do both.
I mean,
You know,
I would.
if a
I would like
volcano
that.
erupts, near your town, then probably both.
I mean, I would enjoy that potential. That if you're going to create an event that is so, we're trying to live in a world that changes, that potentially your population could be devastated too.
Guess if lava rains down, you could be damaged by the lava.
Yep.
I've been playing a lot of Minecraft with my kids. Actually, it's growing on me. That game, for the longest time, I was so annoyed whenever they would ask me to play Minecraft because it just was not my thing. The one thing that drives me nuts the most, because we'll generally play in survival mode, but it's usually on easy survival. So I think there's peaceful, easy, and then it kind of up to hard. So we'll play easy, not peaceful, so you can still get damaged. But anyways, night turns to day, pop out of your building that you just spent all this time building, and all of a sudden this damn creeper explodes that you didn't know was right behind you, blows up half your building, and you. So,
Yeah.
if
And that's
Minecraft
on
can
easy
do it,
mode.
yeah.
That's on easy. So yeah, if Minecraft can do that on easy, we can probably take some similar damage.
We've had a couple of builds where all I've done is to go get damn stone and build a fence around the huge perimeter because they can't jump over it. Because I got so damn annoyed at my buildings being or the pins to the animals. You'd spend all this time collecting pigs and sheep, and then all of a sudden, boom, creeper blows it up. They all start running away, and then you got to get leashes, and it's just annoying. So if Minecraft can do it, Ashes of Creation can do it.
I hope so. Make farming fun.
Yes, that is all I will do. So,
I wonder what the limit is if there's something at a walking around character level that you can do to damage a building in that way, or if it's the sort of thing that you need a minimum of a war machine to actually damage a building. Otherwise, you're just going to be sitting there hacking at it with your sword for about an hour.
that's an interesting question. If you could do a siege, right? We talk about subterfuge and kind of hiding, because isn't part of it's going to be you have to sneak somebody in and they have to do something within the city, right? Has that been? Am I making that up? There was like this thought at some point of like a quest line or something where you would have to complete a certain task to trigger.
You have to do something to trigger the siege.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, steal the crystal or whatever that protects the place from attack or whatever.
Right. So going with your thought, that would be, once you're pushed into a siege, could you, employ some people to go behind the scenes and weaken some of the internal structures for you ahead of time? That actually would be fun too. Then you'd have to not just focus on the outside of your position. You'd actually have to pay attention to what's going on within your city still.
More objective-based objectives are preferable for me because that's what I like to focus on rather than killing the people. So,
All right. Anything else on that? This one was again pretty straightforward. Well, what?
Snipe Hunter says that earthquakes are potentially easier than hurricanes or tornadoes. Camera shake is cheap and easy.
Yes, it is.
That's true.
So,
Will unique items limited to one per server? That still blows my mind that they're going to have. I'm trying to think of other examples of that within popular MMORPGs where there's literally one or two of a specific item that exists throughout the entire server. The only thing that comes to my mind is way back. This might have been even vanilla. Actually, was Burning Crusade out? It might have been vanilla. WoW, with the gates of, I can never say it, AQ. I can never say the actual word. There was a server-wide initiative to open the gates to get into this new
Oh yeah,
zone.
on Courage. That's
Right, and the
place.
people that first opened that got mounts that no one else could ever get again. So I can't really think of any other systems. But anyways, that alone is like a discussion to have. But the question was, with unique items limited to one per server, what happens when the player leaves? Pretty straightforward answer. The item goes back essentially into circulation, and somebody else will obtain it through whatever method it was originally obtained. Which is an interesting kind of question. Actually, that was a simple answer, but as I'm reading it, what if you got a legendary, like an absolute one-of-a-kind item because of how you developed your node? The server then had some drastic changes. That node disappears. Other nodes open up, changes the entire storyline arc, and then I quit playing. And I had obtained a legendary item from the very beginning, and that story no longer exists. Like, then what?
Right. It's no longer possible to get that because conditions of the server have changed. It's no longer.
So then, like, goes into hiding.
Yeah, that winter dragon or whatever might have been is no longer around. Well, one question is, how long do you have to be gone before it disappears? 2 months? 1 month? What's the 3 months? And then yeah, there was kind of a corollary question on the forums about, or not question necessarily, but request or statement about wanting to be able to being afraid that they were not going to be able to collect 100% of items in the game. And people were like, well, there are legendary items, so some are going to be one per server. It's unlikely that most people will be able to collect everything. And so, yeah, if you're that person who wants to get your hands on that legendary item, but it's no longer available for a variety of reasons, or maybe you stop playing during the months that it becomes available. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all of that works. But the nature of this dynamic world that is constantly changing means you're not going to be able to do everything. You're not going to be able to experience everything. Hopefully, Fippy Darkpaw will not be still around for 5 years doing the same exact thing. You won't have the same exact experience.
25 years.
If you come in, 3 years later. So, yeah, I think going in, people should not be having the expectation that you can collect everything. And with these legendary items, it seems like there will be several things that most people will never get their hands on, which I think is okay.
Yeah, in the long run, how much of this matters if there's not a good way to capture the story?
Well, that brings up another thing that I
ran
into on the
like the game's open. We hit our 10-year anniversary. Year one, there was this magic item that was just so cool. If you had if you had a way to record that, like, who cares?
So there was a discussion about that on the forums the last couple of days because somebody was requesting that there be a out-of-game app that people could used to access server history. They were saying that they wanted it so that all that information, it could only be what's available in the library. And I was like, well, why would you have that information in a library? Server history in a library. Ancient lore in a library and books, I understand. Server history and books in a library seems weird. But it turns out that the scientific node at the stage 3 level gets a library that will chronicle server history. Narrative is what they more specifically said, so I'm not sure exactly how much will be contained there. Certainly, outside, we will have access to server history. One of the quotes has been that newbies will be able to read server histories and decide which server they want to join. So server history will be recorded in some fashion and we'll be able to read up on it. But I'm very curious to see how they're going to keep that information in a library. I don't think books and notes, somebody said they could do it like notes in New World, but even notes.
But what if you lose that node?
Server history.
What if you never grow a node, a scientific node? for
That's
a server.
what I'm saying. So you'll be able to see that recorded history outside of.
I said we can just keep everybody dumb
I don't.
by not letting the scientific node grow.
Well, but again, you'll have access to that information outside of the server because you use that information to choose what server you want to join. So I don't know why people would be going to a library to find that information in the first place. And again, I don't know why it would. I'm trying to understand what kind of form that information would be disseminated in because book form and notes don't seem like a very good medium to let you see what server history is. But those options will be there.
You're pretty quiet about all this, Neuro.
Yeah, it's
Did my mood scare you off too?
no.
Phantom is so angry today. He's hungry.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we can go on.
This next one was actually I had kind of commented on or quoted the last show because I thought it was a really cool quote. But the question was, how do you plan to establish big characters and story arcs in an ever-changing and node-driven world? And this actually applies kind of to what we were just talking about. The answer was so good for me that I actually wrote this one out word for word. So Steven said, story arcs, the story arc system is built in such a way that there are marquee characters or story plots, and they have multiple places where they can pivot to tell a different story. Player decision, cultural representation, which node gets developed at all, in turn reacts with how the narrative and dialogue play out on a particular server. And this was the quoted part. So many sandbox MMORPGs, they do not create as much curated content as theme park MMORPGs, and their excuse for doing that is because they incorporate player-driven mechanics. But that is a bit of a cop-out, and it's the opposite approach that we've taken with Ashes of Creation. The reason for that is if you give the player a door and there's nothing behind that door, then opening the door is meaningless. So what we have to do is create a very functional story arc system that provides content in many different ways, but is behind the door of world progress or world development that is then executed by the player population. So, and ding, 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 there's the title of the show for today, Behind the Door.
Door number 3. What that has me thinking of that I hadn't thought about before, because, as a person who does not appear to be of European descent, although I'm sure I have European descent in my heritage somewhere, I hope to see what I call iconic characters, but I think this is what Stephen refers to as marquee characters. I hope to see those featured so that we don't always have blonde, blue-eyed heroes as our as the face of the game. But what this has me thinking of is marquee characters appearing depending on what the racial government of a metro or city is. That could be really cool to have those, right? The players push the narrative of the marquee characters based on who has control of the city or metro and when and all of that. That could make the servers even more different, right? Your marquee characters are appearing at different times and doing different things based on the rise and falls of the nodes. I had been thinking more about world bosses appearing and disappearing, but marquee characters, and that might be one of the reasons why you want to try and siege a city or town, is because you want to get one of these marquee characters generated. That could be really fascinating.
Yeah, it's something that I wonder about from going back to the discussion about Jim the Bowyer months ago, maybe even a year ago at this point. The idea of a character that that characters in general are mostly not persistent, and that if you've got somebody who sells good items in a place, then you knock that place down. That character, even if they didn't die in battle of anything, they essentially are dead. They are essentially, they have been ungenerated from this world. They will not be generated once more. So maybe they have a relative somewhere down the road or something, but that character themselves are, they are gone. Now the idea of a marquee character kind of changes that a little bit. If you have characters that are influential in some way, and not just because they're royalty or some, mucky muck from back in Sanctus or whatever it is, but maybe they're just a really good crafter. Maybe they're just really good at processing and treating wood or whatever it is. That character would be a marquee character that you would see later down the line in different places. And so the greater or lesser part of the population, the people that may have quests but are, not necessarily functional or incredibly important, they would sort of disappear, if the place gets knocked over, because their purpose is kind of gone. They would be repopulated with different peasants essentially. But maybe the crafters and some of the other sorts of people that are a little bit more specialized would actually stick around. They would go to a different place, whatever would, potentially happen. I like the idea of seeing more of that and being able to see characters kind of move around, change their skill and change their style and stuff based on the areas that they're at.
And I suppose we should see something similar with religions and social orgs, and possibly that could be a push and pull with the gods as well, depending on who we see, which god we see active most often could be whoever the top religion is. And again, that gives us some reason to, especially if we're getting quests from a specific god, then it might behoove us to make sure that we keep their religion up at the top.
I'm super curious how you do this, and I hope one day we can have a storyteller join us, because because you can't. I mean, I would imagine in many stories you have a beginning and you have an end, and it's like, how do you get to the end, right? But how do you? So in this system, do we do like a dozen ends, and you just have different trees that can all eventually point to one of those 12, but they take a different way? Like, I'm just so curious how you actually come up with a system that pivots in a way that still makes sense over the long haul. It's just
Well, hopefully we have people who are able to keep adjusting the narrative too as years go along. Since it's dynamic, it doesn't have to stay exactly the same. And we always have this I don't want to say promise, but uh, statement from devs saying that that they want to have new content every quarter. And I don't think I've actually quite seen that happen. But it is one of the dev goals for Ashes of Creation is to have new content popping in quarterly. So making kind of tweaks to quests could be something that could happen. I mean, that would be nice.
It's kind of solves the issue of, I guess if it's done well, solves the issue of downtime, right? That you run into between expansions, because you could just say, okay, I've reached this point. I'm going to jump on an alt on a different server, and I'm just going to go. I potentially experience a very different narrative to
Yes.
fill those gaps. Who knows if it's enough to feel different, but.
Also, Steven was joking about jumping into avatars and, playing around and, kind of like we're supposed to be able to do with the Monster Coin events. And I would love it if we had GMs sometimes jumping in to marquee characters or showing
I
up
missed
as a
that.
god or whatever.
Those encounters in EverQuest where you would have guides or GMs jump in were very fun moments. Actually, pretty memorable moments to those games as well. So
First time you kill a god and you're like, oh, whoops.
I'm trying to remember, what was it, Brad, that somebody always was a chicken? What was their the cockatrice? Cockatrice? Is that how you say that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think one of them always would run around as that, and so you would rarely catch a glimpse, and it'd be like, but you would know who it was, and it just made for very memorable moments. So, all right, we could probably spend a whole show on that topic when we have a guest in to talk about it, and we have several questions left and not very much time. So this next question, actually, I was initially when I sort of watched the video at first, I didn't think too much about, but then second look, I kind of popped a thought in my head. So the question was, since heavy armor is strong against physical attacks, cloth armor is strong against magical attacks, what will make players want to do leather armor? Like, why would you want something in the middle? And essentially the answer was armor is based on threat assessment, what kind of damage, what blend of damage is incoming. It's completely situational. And this is what I was curious about. He said one set of armor is not situationally relevant for every encounter, so you'll need to obtain multiple sets of armor to be used based on the encounter faced. So I'm curious as to how many sets of armor we need to go out and collect. And that's what threw me a little bit, was I'm not a big fan of like, okay, I have to get my frost armor and I have to get my fire armor.
I'm glad that it magically fits itself on your body and removes and packs itself away neatly, because thinking about how long it takes to put on and take off a full set of plate armor, that's like an hour with a trained squire that knows you and has been working with you. This is not the sort of thing that you can realistically do out in the open between two fights. Then again, creatures can see a lot shorter distance than things looking in the distance in real life. So, whatever, there's some magic going on with it. It's fine, I guess. It just seems a little weird to me that you would need to carry all sorts of different forms of equipment like this. It would seem like there's got to be abilities to help people bridge the gaps in other ways, like spellcasters being able to put up an anti-material shield orb or something that slows the rate things come in to dampen damage against them from physical sources, or some sort of fighter having screaming rage mode where spells just don't work as well on them because they're screaming so loud that it messes with the incantations or something. I don't know. There's ways I think there's other ways to do it than requiring people to constantly swap out their equipment. And that was one of the things that was a big point of frustration for me in WoW, is that I had, back in vanilla, I had 315 max resist in all of the elements, which meant I had a ton of equipment. Some of it was blue, some of it was purple, some of it was green. But it got the attributes up there in case that was the thing that I needed to tank. I didn't play a fighter. I played a shaman. I was like the nature tank. It was hilarious. But, raid geared nature tank, it worked. It was something I actually didn't like about the game, though. I thought that was like a downside, the idea that you have to carry all this different gear and that you've got buttons on your hotbar that you use to swap your equipment on the fly as you need to. That doesn't feel good. If that's the case, I'm just going to stick with leather so I don't have to play the game. I don't have to play the jump around equipment game. I'll just run middle of the line and try not to get hit as much and try not to get magicked as much. It seems like a really funky sort of thing. And then it also kind of says leather kind of sucks, other than like utilities and stuff, that if you're going against something that casts spells, everybody put your cloth on. If you're going against heavy melee fighters, everyone put your heavy on. Well, where's the situation where you put leather on when you're fighting both? Why not just keep the leather on the entire time? A case like this, it's such a weird sort of thing that I would imagine it's going to be people trying to blend somewhere in like a middle range, like some amount of light, some amount of heavy, and some amount of medium that averages out to about a medium, and trying to just, get the best of attributes for the things they need from each of the different things, but kind of end up in more of a middle range rather than literally carrying 2 to 3 sets of equipment in any given encounter, not even talking about resistances and those sorts of equipments that you might also need.
Well, it still seems better to me than Chronicles of Illyria, where they were saying you're going to have to make sure that you carry the uh, clothing and armor that you need based on weather, because you might cross over the line into a desert and need to take off all of your fur, or you might succumb to the cold if you don't have your fur armor or fur gear with you when you cross into a cold um, climate,
I don't
which is
like that. I mean,
not what I want to do when I'm playing a game. I don't have to want to worry about that.
it's something Pantheon's doing. Just theirs is more of a straightforward, cut and dry gating sort of way, which is you get to this zone. If you don't have, minimum X cold resist, you're gonna freeze your ass off. You try to go in, and it's like a very explicit. You need this to go forward, rather than everything being, and I guess everything's kind of like an average temperate sort of thing outside of those specialized zones. I can definitely see how that's completely different than, MMOs. Everything's abbreviated. It's not going to take you that long to run from a rainforest to the plains to the desert. And the fact that you have to stop twice to change your equipment each time, that does definitely seem kind of funky and cumbersome. But at least you're like dressing up and dressing down with one set of equipment. You're not putting on 3 different sets of attire. You don't step into a zone. It's like, all right, time to put on my boots and rubbers, or
Well, it sounds like you do
whatever.
going into a rainforest. Um, but I was surprised by Steven's answer because it kind of focused on defense instead of offense, which is typically why I choose my armor, I think. Um, if I'm thinking WoW and I think EQ, I'm usually thinking about what kind of stats are going to benefit my um, my abilities, not so much um, I'm trying to survive elemental damage or whatever. But and the way it worked in Alpha 1 was interesting for me because I'm fashion over function typically. And so if I'm doing leather gear, I'm probably going to be wearing all leather. Um, if I'm a caster, I'm not going to be wearing any plate. But the way the stats worked for Alpha 1, uh, you did have resistances. Like plate was for physical, heavy armor was for physical um, damage, like protection against physical damage, and uh, cloth was for protection against magical damage. And so I ended up wearing some plate and some cloth as a cleric. And I expect that might be the same going forward, that I might have uh, a mixture of heavy, medium, and light, depending on how I want that to either help my abilities or whether or not I think I'm going to be in combat, or I want to make sure that if I'm going to be in combat against things that are going to give me physical damage, I have some armor that will protect me to some degree against physical damage. So I expect people to be having a mix. And it won't just be, oh, I'm going to only wear leather armor. People are going to be looking at what the stats provide and thinking about whether or not they're expecting to get a lot of physical damage or a lot of magical damage or whatever the stats on that type of armor says. So I think we aren't even going to be looking at leather. We're going to be looking at medium and then looking at what those stats provide, because we can wear, any class can wear any armor. So we don't have to really look at that like we used to in D&D, for instance. But we'll see.
Muted.
It makes me wonder that with how he talks about, like, you think of the traditional tank, right, in heavy armor fighting, but it almost sounds like, well, there'll be encounters where that might not be your optimal meat shield, right? That your optimal person might actually be full cloth, soaking in whatever magic's being thrown at them, which is also kind of an interesting way to look at that. I think my preference overall, rather than having multiple different types of armors, is just to rely on, when you have things, we don't know enough yet, but rely on potions, maybe food if you want to do magical food. Stonewing also mentioned just change the augments, so that you don't have to necessarily have 36 different pieces of armor sitting around in your bank. Or if they do, then we need a lot of storage. So
I kind of like the idea of taking a break and eating some different food for some different food buffs. That would be really awesome. Huh. And, well, especially if you have different races that specialize in, magical defenses versus physical defenses and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
I'd love to know how all that works racially, culturally.
I feel like that also helps you engage other players, right? I can contribute to the raid, not necessarily by fighting, but by crafting you the potions that you need to take, or the food. Yeah, I mean, rather than just relying on an armor crafter that really play, or a weaponsmith that play the two primary crafting roles. It would be nice to share that amongst other groups. So.
Yeah, that would be awesome to be master chef and be the one who gets to tag along on raids, because you're gonna rely on me to, whip up some cool food. Huh.
We are basically at the end, but I did want to do one more question because I thought it was an interesting answer. So it was. No, actually, that's on there. We can save that for later. Yes, I was, because that actually pulls. And see, you're gonna make me talk about it anyways.
No, don't.
Well, it makes me wonder about the mounts that we're purchasing, and it's different. It's mixed messages. But anyways, actually, you know what? Let's talk about. We can save the other one for later. So yeah. So we'll do that one. Will some aquatic mounts have utility skills that can be used in fishing? The answer is yes. Fishing. Steven says he loves fishing. It's going to be a big part of the game. And they are developing a really cool system for fishing. And that, yes, mounts will have skills that relate to fishing. So the examples he threw out there were, maybe fish finding, chumming the area, or maybe you have a turtle that you actually get a benefit to your fishing skill while mounted on the turtle in the water. All that sounds cool, and I'm totally for like that. Even gives you extra reasons to collect mounts besides just having the mounts. But I guess where I get confused by that answer is then when we go to the shop, right, and you read the flavor text of things that are being purchased. That if you're not really into the understanding of the game, you don't realize that, okay, this is a skin. This actually doesn't provide any benefit. And then you see an answer like this, and it's like, I feel like that. I just feel like that messaging is so poor when it comes to the shop. But it's a cool idea. I'm curious how that works, right? So when you pick up a mount that has fish finding, like what actually is it that you're getting, since you can apply a different skin to it? Is it actually, he mentioned a turtle specifically. So is it actually a turtle mount that you can only apply turtle skins to?
Well, it sounds like you would only be able to apply a chumming skin to a chumming to something that has the chumming ability. But what that makes me think of is right. That's definitely a reason why you might want to group. Like, I don't know that I want to be casting a rod and pulling in the fish, but I might have fun being on a mount and chumming the water for a friend who wants to fish.
Well, I don't
Yeah.
know how active the chumming process is. I think you're supposed to kind of chum the water and then be still and chill while the things come to go eat.
Depends on how far away you are, right? Right. So if I'm
Maybe.
far enough to get the fish to go closer to the person who's doing the fishing, that works, right?
Kind of.
Because isn't it dolphins? There's some dolphins that work with um, humans who have nets, and they go out and they push. They teach their young how to push the fish towards the nets, and it works for both the humans and the dolphins, something like that. So, um, yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, it's interesting if you could share benefits. That would be pretty cool, right? To go out and I'm on a mount that increases, my ability to capture better fish. You're out there just kind of doing your thing, chumming the water, and Neuro's over here just like, oh, finding the fish right over there, right over there, right over there. You can apply that in so many other ways too, right? So horses maybe provide better ranged attacks. So if you have a bow, you're somehow benefiting from that, or if you have like a tiger mount or a lion mount that you're better hunter on the ground and catching things, skinning things. Maybe the elephant can knock boulders over, and that's how you get your stone. It's a whole interesting idea for mounts that I don't think we've seen games where mounts give some bonus, obviously speed, but there's been others as well. EverQuest 2 has mounts that will give you your character some bonuses. It's a lot of interesting attributes. I still worry, like I'm curious just how that all gets put into place. And then that shop still bugs me.
I think there's a lot that could be done with the fishing. I can't remember if they explicitly said if it's fly fishing or spear fishing or what's going on, because I could definitely see more of it being like you've got your fishing spear and they're riding forward and you're basically, jousting those things and trying to spear them up and stack as many as you can on the spear on your your fishing skewer. That could definitely, or that is a way to hunt something bigger that you and your mount both kind of attack it. Maybe try to just go for more of a grapple or something to hold it in place while you try to spear it, and then once you've got it impaled, you go up to the surface and do whatever, spin it over your head, bop it with a pin, whatever you're gonna do.
So.
Yeah, spear fishing could be fun. Bear fishing.
What if we have naval combat? How do mounts, apply there as well? There's I don't know.
They bring the closest they bring all the mages close enough, and then the mages go boom, and then things explode. That's that's how they attack in combat.
I would love to take a mount underwater and take my spear and poke a hole in the bottom of a boat.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I feel like
that'd be another reason for your dolphin lance.
feel like we're getting way ahead of ourselves. Back to the yes, yes, yes of 2017, 16. All right.
Yeah, like net fishing, detecting things, surface fishing, deep water fishing, saltwater, freshwater. There's a lot of permutations where different sort of mounts could be useful in different ways for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think I know what you were going to say next.
Oh, I was going to say we're about out of time. We
Yep,
are out of time.
That is what you were going to say next.
So next weekend is a holiday, so we will probably not be having a show then, and we will return the weekend after that. So everyone have a good 2 weeks, and we will see you back here. We got some more questions. We got a lot of catching up to do, so I'm not too worried about discussions. We actually didn't even get to the dev question, which is an interesting one. So we will get to that in 2 weeks. So everyone, thank you for joining us. And again, it's been a really fun night, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Later, everybody.